party. Now we want to move on to our next selection, Weber's types of legitimate domination. It expands his analysis of the party concept discussed in the earlier reading. Weber here is interested in authority. Pay close attention to the diagram on page 169. This is a typology of order, individual versus collective, and the basis for such order and action, non-rational or rational. Here, authority has a specific meaning. It means power, this idea of power that he developed in the previous reading. He's expanding on this. He forces people, power is the ability to force people to adhere to certain lines of action. I can't decide that I don't want to pay my taxes, for example. Power has, for Weber, its political basis in what he terms authority. A society's political system is based on this authority. So it's the foundation of a religion, a political movement, any other form of social organization whereby individuals are constrained in terms of their actions. They might take predicated on their adherence to this authority. People that belong to, the Catholic Church, for example, would be, they have authoritative pronouncements on certain things, and even a smaller religious denomination may as well. So there are three types of authority here that you need to be aware of as you're reading this. The first is charismatic authority. Charismatic authority is you see on this diagram, begins with individual action, the actions of a particularly charismatic individual, to use the word. Authority that stems from the ability of an individual leader to affect others greatly, to gain followers and to influence these followers to implement a line of action. Note that there's no moral value. Everybody from Jesus to Hitler to Mahatma Gandhi all did this, for good or worse. All of these had profound influence on their world at the time in which they lived and continue to now. Whether you're in India or whether you're practicing some form of Christianity, this is authority based on a leader's extraordinary characteristics. The problem is it cannot hold without transforming itself in some rule-based system. Leaders, after all, are mortal. They're human. So there's got to be a way to transform this charismatic authority into some other form of authority. And Weber terms this the routinization of charisma. It's a process whereby charismatic authority becomes the basis for traditional authority, the second kind of authority. Now, traditional authority is based on the sanctity of traditions, the divine right of kings. The papacy. People, ascending to, it's usually characterized by a monarchy or some sort of idea of royalty or something. Okay, or the second type of authority, or the third type of authority is rational legal authority. That's a belief in the enacted rules and the right of those in power, the right of those in authority to issue commands. Rational legal authority, whether it's a democracy, and we're talking about or communist dictatorships, or Nazis or fascists, have had this type of legal authority that characterizes the modern era. Everybody from Stalin to the UN to Hitler, to the DPRK to modern democracies, all have trials of one sort or another. They're often considered to be shams, depending on whether the authority is universally recognized, or is fair or not. But we're not here to make a moral judgment. And the Nazis took over, for example. It was a movement from Hitler's Charismatic Authority to a rational legal authority. They were fastidious in the passing of volume after volume after volume of law. And planning and implementing and characterizing. All this is a very rational process toward a great evil. So that's a rational term. Now, monarchies, again, the Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church are examples of traditional authority. Now, in his final reading, Weber talks about bureaucracy. This is another central concept to Weber. Okay? And Weber is looking now at rational authority. Okay, he's looking at this one specific kind of authority, rational authority. And he comes up with, it's a type of authority that's, it not only dominates political order, but it dominates forms of social organization in terms of formal organizations, businesses, corporations. Weber is trying to make sense of something that was not there on the scene when Marx was doing theorizing on the economy. That is corporate ownership. The idea of a scientific manager versus an owner versus a worker. So for Weber, there are 6 characteristics of a modern bureaucracy. The first is there's jurisdictional areas, which he calls, they're ordered by rules. The rules, a bureaucracy has rules. Second, it has some kind of, he calls them offices. This is an interesting translation, but an office is merely a position in a social organization. And from those, we have a hierarchy. There's a president of a university, for example. There's a head of, there's a president of a university. There's a vice president for students, one for faculty, one for other administrative duties, and so forth. There are deans, there are chairs of departments, and then there are professors, right? And then these are all characterized as his third aspect of a democracy, or characteristic of a democracy, is that bureaucracies are characterized by written documents. All of this is written down. This is a rational authority in that there's an appeal to written rule. In other words, this isn't like, I like my buddy, over here, he's better than you. No, you have to adhere to the rules if you're going to, in terms for promotion. You can't just do it, Now, in reality, it's not the way it happens, but, in this type, what Weber called an ideal type, it's an appeal to written rules. Fourth, there are basically specialization. In other words, that's where you're the old cliche, that's not in my job description. Weber, that comes from Weber. Weber described in this work, Bureaucracy, an organization where there was, in terms of division of labor, a concept we've talked about with Marx and Durkheim. For Weber, that was within a bureaucracy. You have a specialized task to do. You have a job. I'm a sociology professor. I'm not going to start lecturing in French. My French is pretty crappy. You wouldn't want that. So that's that's a characteristic. Specialization is another characteristic. Let's see. There are rules. The rules are stable. And they are they're written down, and so those are and this is going to enable the organization, because it's a bureaucracy, to work to full capacity. People often knock bureaucracies, but think about what would happen if they ran the division of motor vehicles like they, I don't know, like they ran my family or something like that. It would be a disaster. Bureaucracies level the play, have the capacity to level the playing field, to make things better, to have a set of rules to appeal to, and to make things run smoothly. That's Weber's rational assessment of bureaucracy. Now, there's a non-rational part, though. Weber was keenly aware that there were individuals involved, humans, and that strict adherence to this bureaucracy could be, he had his own version of Marx's concept of alienation. Strict adherence to this bureaucracy could be dehumanizing. You know, if you have to appeal to rules, you have a rigidly defined specialization and so forth, then you're not going to be able to fully express your ability as a human being to create your world. And Weber termed this bureaucratic alienation. Okay, so this is kind of a very quick flyover of this vast amount of information we're talking about with Max Weber, one of the central theorists of sociology and sociological thinking in the past 2 centuries. So again, this is just a very brief, hitting the high points encapsulation. Please dig deep into the material and read it, and read this as you're going along. Our next topic will be Georg Simmel. His name's pronounced Georg. Georg Simmel. It's written like George Simmel, but it's Georg Simmel. Okay. Thank you very much.